Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hey, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We today are going to talk about a concept that you might be doing at certain parts of your day, but we would like you to think about how you can infuse it all day long.
Yeah.
It's called small teaching. That's not teaching small people. That's not teaching quietly in a small way. That's none of that. Small teaching is taking the overall thing that you need to teach and dividing it into 4 parts. The 4 parts of teaching this lesson and connecting with children. And if you see on YouTube, I'm looking over to my right, it's because I have the information there. So I'm going to look over there. I'm going to let you know the 4 parts, and then Alison and I are going to discuss it more because we want to challenge you to think about whether you are an early educator or a family member or both, to think about when there's something you want to teach children, no matter when, whether you're with a large group of children, a small group of children, one-to-one, like maybe during free choice time, walking down the hall, whatever you're doing, maybe you're out on a walk with your children, maybe you're taking a ride, whatever it is you're doing, to think about how this can apply and help children add to their knowledge in a systematic kind of way.
Yeah.
Okay. So a very brief part is step 1. It's brief. Step 1 is the moments before a lesson starts, excuse me, but the moments before a lesson starts, you need to connect with the child. So that could be just talking with them first about what they did over the weekend. If you're a family member, maybe it's first talking with them about what they did when they were in school.
Yeah.
Maybe it's talking about something you have in common, just some sort of human connection. Because all learning requires connection, and we don't have to connect over the topic that we're trying to teach them all the time. This is about connecting as people.
It's the relationship part of it, I feel. That's the relationship part of it. Yeah.
We all learn best through relationship.
Yeah.
So whenever we're going to teach an important concept of any kind, we first need to establish that personal relationship by just talking about something casually and connecting. That connects us. The next part is the initial minutes of a lesson, which is the introduction. So how am I introducing this? And that should be intentional. We used to, and some places probably still do this, when years ago when I used to lesson plan, you had to put like your setting question. What question or idea am I going to present to set the stage for the learning that's going to take place?
Yeah.
That could be, you can introduce things through a story. You can introduce things through a question.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, but there needs to be some introduction that's like a hook. Now you're making the child curious about what you're going to say.
Yeah. You need to get them interested in the topic that you are going to be presenting. Right? Because if you just go right into the meat of the lesson, they're going to be like, okay, cool. Like, awesome.
It's coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. I don't understand why we're here.
During large group time, like you can connect with the children, just be like, hey, what'd you do last night when you went home? I was watching TV. What were you doing? I had to fold laundry. What were you all doing at home? Yeah. Whatever it is. And then after you establish a connection with them, you might bring things that would intrigue them into your large group time. You could be sitting in small group time and then do that initial few minutes of introduction. Maybe you're going to be using counting bears or Legos and just say to the children, wow, let's take a look at these. There are so many of these. What do you notice about the Legos? What do you notice about the counting bears? And sort of try to steer the conversation to what is called the main part of the lesson, the body of the lesson, which is what you want to teach them. Now, we can't just unzip their heads and pour the information in. We have to teach them in a way where they get to be hands-on, where they get to self-discover, right? Where they get to think about and analyze and explore the topic. So that takes a long time.
Yeah.
Right? That's the longest segment. And then the last segment are the last minutes of the lesson or the conclusion. And during the conclusion, it's a good idea, say the experts, to ask children in some way to recall what you've been talking about, because that helps to cement it in their memories. So I'm just going to go through these 4 parts again, Allison, and then you maybe tell your story about large group time that you were talking about when we prepped for this.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So again, the first segment is the moments before the lesson when we're going to connect as humans, as people, with the children. Then the initial moments of the lesson, we're going to introduce it with something provocative, some provocation, an image, an item, a question, something to hook them in. The next part is the main part of the lesson, which is the body of what we're doing. We want to teach them something, and then how are we going to do that in a way that keeps them hooked in? And then the last minutes, the conclusion, which should be some sort of recall about what we're doing, and maybe connecting it to something we've done in the past. I forgot about that part before. To continue to make connections.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that many teachers are doing this already, because I did this today and didn't realize it was called anything. It's
called small teaching.
Way I teach, right? So yeah. All right. So this morning during large group, we were all sitting down and we were talking about, it's Monday. So I was like asking, what'd you do this weekend? And, that's how we kind of connected, because some of them say a lot of them like, oh, they went to the park. I'm like, it was a beautiful weekend for the park. Yes, I went to the park with my dog, or some, whatever. So it was like a way to kind of connect that I'm just like them in a way, like I go to the park too. I go to church too. I do these things like that they do. And so then my question of the day was something that kind of introduced the whole lesson. It was how I got them hooked a little bit into it. We're learning about insects, but my question was, how many people live in your house? But I wanted that question to be that because my lesson was about how certain types of insects are very social and they have millions of ants or bees in their colonies, and how they have, like, we have our family in our house, but in insect world it's called a colony, and and how they could work together even though there's millions of them, they somehow communicate. And I had a book that I showed them the real life pictures of ants and bees working together in their houses. So it kind of got them hooked into that, and then it led to this second part of the lesson of like, how do the insects work together and how do we work together as a class? And how do you guys work together with your family? What jobs do you do in the class or at home? Just like ants and bees have their jobs in their colonies. And that's kind of how that lesson went around. And then at the end, I asked them, what did we learn? Do you have any questions? Showed them the pictures again. But instead of me talking about the pictures, I wanted them to talk about the pictures so I could see if they were getting the information. So it was kind of like,
so what was the main lesson was? The main lesson was about cooperation?
Yes. How insects cooperate in their large colonies, just like we do here in the classroom. And how
so was that similarity?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And how we work together always, how your family's working together, and in the class, we all have our separate jobs because we work together too. And that's how the system kind of keeps going, how your family works, and how, is that you have certain roles that you play in your family, certain roles that you play at the classroom, Right. But I feel like, I think a lot of times, a lot of teachers are doing this small group or small teaching. I don't think they realize they're doing it in large group. I think they're doing it hopefully. Yeah, I think because I think the large group, that's easy to set up, right? Like I set that up today. That was an easy setup, right?
I think it's easy to set up if you've let go of some of the things we know don't actually teach
Yes.
children a whole bunch, which is like today's date for young
No need.
children. They're not relating to that until elementary school. So,
Yeah.
you know, you've got a very short attention span time there, and you want to
Mhm.
get through a lesson, you've got to get to it. You can't be
Yeah.
like, I don't know, padding it with all these other things that we want children to memorize. So
Yeah.
if you have let go of all those other things, which we talk about in other episodes of the podcast,
Yeah.
if you've let go of all those other things and you're focusing on a particular thing that you want to share with the children having to do with your day, you may very well be doing this small teaching during large group. I think people do this a little naturally in certain situations. I don't know that people do it when they go to children during free playtime and they realize there's a teachable moment happening. Like, how do I teach them this lesson? I don't know if people are doing it then. I don't know if people are doing it in small group where we would sit the children down. Like, let's say you want them to work on a math thing or a literacy thing, and we sit them down and set the stage first for a minute. And I'm not saying for long. I'm saying just say something to the children as they're walking over to connect with them.
Yeah.
Um, Introduce the topic really briefly, showing materials or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Get
See, because
into
I
what
think,
you want to teach them in small group and then ask them for recall.
yes, I think with certain things, we might do this. Like counting bears come to mind, right? Like whenever I'm trying to teach sorting and classifying through counting bears, I feel like I have a very small teaching way of going about it. You know, you sit down with a child, maybe you're talking a little bit, you sit there, you take the bears out. What do you notice about these bears? What are they, what's the same? What's different? Okay, now let's sort them based on these differences or similarities. Let the children do that, hands-on work, you know, and then come back around and conclude the whole thing of like, oh, look, we did sorting by colors or sorting by size. Let's count them and then we can put them away, kind of thing. But I think you don't do it with everything. I think some things maybe are just easier to do it with than others, right? But like, if we're really trying to be intentional about everything, you probably could think of a way to do all of it at all times, right?
You know, I think the key to that introduction, the hook to get them in
Yeah,
is, make it intriguing or relatable.
yeah,
Um, the scale in the classroom, like let's
mhm,
say you're going to be
yeah,
weighing things, right? And a lot of early
yeah,
childhood classrooms have a scale.
yeah,
It's not a bad idea to show them a picture of a baby on a scale
yeah,
and just talk about how scales are used to check the weight of many things. Have you ever gotten on the scale when you went to the doctor? They ever check your
yeah,
weight? This is another kind of scale. We're going to see which is lighter and which is heavier, to make that connection to the
yeah.
outside of my classroom, to real life, to
To
something they
the,
can
yeah,
relate to, I think is really
yeah,
important in the beginning, and not just sit them down and go, this is a scale. We're going to
yeah,
see which side is heavier. Let's put some things here and
yeah,
some things there. Let's make it something that they can talk with us about for a minute,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
When you say to the children, when you go to the doctor, does the doctor ever put you on a scale? You ever check your weight? You ever stand on that scale and they tell you how much you weigh? Scales are used for many different things, and then head
yeah,
into the counting bears in the scale or the Legos in
yeah,
the scale or whatever you're going to do, and
yeah,
talk about weight. I also think about going over to children during free choice time. And, maybe they have children at a table drawing and you need to establish the connection with them. And you can just sit down and start drawing and
yeah,
talk about what you're all drawing and using before you go to
yeah,
teach whatever you felt was a teachable moment,
yeah,
right? Or
right,
whatever you felt, you saw the children over there and you wanted to help them maybe with their grip on the crayons.
right,
Maybe just go over and sit and draw and establish a connection before going over and correcting their grip,
right.
right?
Right, because I feel like
Something like
going,
that.
yeah, because I feel like you need that connection so it doesn't seem so intrusive. Like if you're just going to go over there and say, hey, we're going to fix your grip, boom, done, it seems so intrusive. But if you start out with this relationship part of it or this connection, then it doesn't seem as like
I don't know if we
I don't
always
know how else to
realize how
describe it. Yeah, I
intrusive
don't
we
think
are.
people realize that. Yeah.
I don't think we realize how it feels from the other end. I've seen
Yes.
adults go over, children are writing, and I've seen adults silently go over and just reposition their hands without even
See, but I
saying
think, yeah,
anything.
I feel like the silent part of it makes it so like that's not a lesson. That's just you correcting. And like if you really want them to learn, then you're going to say, hey, this, if you hold the pencil this way, it might be more comfortable, or you might be able to write it a little bit more or something if you explain it a little bit, because then I think now they're buying into it, like, oh well, I want to learn how to write letters better, so yeah, I'm going to try to hold it that way. If you just start correcting them, they're going to be like, well, what'd she do that for? I'm just going to go right back to what I was doing. Like it's so intrusive. And
I've
so
seen
like,
people just move
yeah,
children. I've seen people just correct grips. I've seen
yeah,
people, and with all good intentions. People are doing it with
yes,
all good intentions, but
yes,
I don't think they realize what it must feel like
feel like,
to be
yeah,
that smaller human being, just kind of having people do this stuff.
right.
For
Well, it kind of makes
me,
it seem like they're always wrong, right?
I
Like they must
don't,
think
for
I'm
me,
wrong. Am I
people
wrong?
succeed. I don't know that they're always wrong, but I just think with all good intentions, we go over to make a correction. We don't always think about the receiver. For me, the most important part of this small teaching is that initial connection and the hook, the first
The
two
hook.
parts. Because
Yes.
if I make the initial connection and the hook gets them curious
Yeah.
and brings them in, then I could teach anything.
Yeah. That's true.
Right? If I'm talking with children about buildings and I show them as the hook, I show them a picture of our own school building and
Yeah.
just say, what building is this?
Yep.
What building is this? Who knows? And they'll be so excited because hopefully they will recognize it, or some other
Yeah.
recognizable building where your program is, right? And you
Yeah.
just say, what is this? I also, when I think back as a parent, I I don't think I did much of this at all with my children when I wanted to teach them something about what we were doing. So even if it's being done in early childhood programs, which I hope you are, to teach families about this step by step of the process of small teaching and how we break things up into these
Yeah.
segments, it could be very helpful to people who are raising young children.
Yes.
It's not a teacher secret. We should be
No.
sharing it
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
This is the way that you can connect with your child and intrigue your child in order to teach a lesson. And then we always need to ask for connections to prior lessons and recall, because again, that's what cements the memory a little more.
Yeah.
So not to say they don't struggle with memory, they do because of their brain development, but it would help them along, I think. So we
Yeah.
want to think about, how do we do these 4 segments that we talked about throughout the day, and how do
Okay.
we
Yeah.
teach it to families,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
that would be so so beneficial. I'm sorry I keep coughing on this podcast. It's just going to be that way for a little bit. This is
It's we're
me
human
and my
beings, and
yeah,
it's
me
spring
me and the
here, so
allergies.
yeah.
Me and the allergies. I was outside today, and this is the price you pay.
Well, yeah,
So,
it's so beautiful
what are you
now,
going to do?
right? So it's like I
What are you going
struggled
to
with
do?
that. Yes. What are you gonna do?
Okay, folks, I hope you'll go back and think about what we've said about those 4 parts, about helping families understand it. And we will catch you next time on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Bye, peeps.